hold on. All right. And then the recording should also start. Yep, it's recording. You're good to go, Mario, I think.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. Welcome to the presentation that we're having tonight. We're just gonna start shortly, just so everybody knows, the same format as we've had in the past couple of meetings that I've held virtually, including the AGM, where I'll be presenting, and then at the end we could have, there's a question and answers, and there's gonna be Andrew with me as the moderator and facilitator to assist with the questions and helping me out with that. And that's it. So there might be a delay from what I understand. So if I'm speaking, it might only come a couple of seconds later. And that's it. So I think, should we go, Andrew? Is there a lot? Is there enough people?
There are 19 people in the meeting right now.
Okay.
So if you want, I think we can start. Like I said, we are recording it, so we'll have it available afterwards. It's 21 now, it jumped up to 21. And there is about a 15-second delay from what we're saying and it going live, but it doesn't affect the end users receiving the messages.
Okay, good. Perfect. Yeah, so like Andrew said, the presentation will be available. I think the past presentation that I did last month as well is online as well on the website, so you can have access to these presentations online, and that's pretty much it. So what we'll do is, I know people are still trickling in. For those who missed the how we opened, it's the same format as the previous presentations we had, where I'll be presenting, and if there's any questions, you could chat them. Preferably, if there's something really important that for clarity that you need at that slide, it's fine to ask the questions. Andrew will be helping me to go through the questions and answers. If not, towards the end, you could do all the questions over there as well. So we'll start. So basically, welcome everybody. Hope everybody's safe. So just to follow up on some of the emails that have been going out, what I wanted to do is to keep everybody in the loop at the club. We have the time to do so. So I wanted to just have these meetings to touch base on what I'm learning and the information I'm getting from my meetings with Soccer Canada, Soccer Quebec. I had another one a couple of weeks ago with some more information that came out. So as the information comes out, I put it together, filter it, and present it to you according to what we can present, because a lot of the things are in the works, almost official, but there's, as you know, some things like dates, because of the situation we're in, that not everything is 100% final. So that's the reason for the meeting tonight. We'll skip forward to the agenda, Andrew, so I can explain that. Good. So agenda for tonight, we're going to discuss the club licensing requirements, player movement, U8 to U12 program and competition. There were some minor changes that have been coming out. We'll discuss the LDP, which is the new league, and the new competition structure. So that's for U13 14, and U14. Then we'll discuss player identification and selection process, and then we'll finish with the Q&A. So we could start with the first section on the club license. So for those who might be a recap for most, but for those who haven't been at previous meetings, you probably heard that Dollard received the provincial license from Soccer Canada. So there's it puts us in the top 25 clubs. So it was a great achievement for the work we've done. Right now, there's 7 national clubs in the province and 17 provincial clubs. So that's where we get the top 25 clubs, because the national and the provincial kind of go together for a lot of the aspects of the club licensing, including some competition aspects. As you see, I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I had a presentation about club licensing last month. So we'll move on to the next slide. So we're going to discuss the criteria to maintain the license. Okay, so a license valid for 2 years. Okay, and basically there's criteria that we continuously have to adhere to, just like we had to during the evaluation process. So basically, if you look at the 6 criteria that will be judged on over the next 2 years, the 1 and 6, I would say, number 1 and number 6 are the 2 that will be, I guess, presented tonight, because it's more applicable to everybody on the outside of the club. So, you know, players, parents, that kind of coaches. And again, you know, the other ones like strategic plans and technical visits, that's something that, you know, we need to do internally as a staff to ensure that we're up to date like we've always done. But number one, performance indicators, and number 6, professionalism is something that everybody has to be part of. So when we talk about number 1, we talk about, you know, how we're viewed in the eyes of Soccer Canada, and we're looking at things like mutate players, retention of players, development of coaches. When we say number of mutate players, we'll get into that later on, but if we base our club on, you know, 75% of our club is only based on getting players from the outside, that's not a positive either when they go and evaluate. So there's a balance between, yeah, you're doing things right and people want to come, but also you should be growing your own talent from within the club as well. So that's a section that we're going to be evaluated on. And then there's also the professionalism, number 6, like I said, that has to do with something else that we'll discuss later, like disciplinary cases, you know, coaches' behavior, respecting protocol, solicitation of players, false advertising, all that kind of stuff, which is also what we're judged on and can, you know, keep or lose our license based on how we behave. So just to get an idea, and then we can move to the next one, Andrew. This is the, might have seen it everywhere. Every major club has this, you know, in their offices when we open, and on the website, etc. It's pamphlet / advertising by Soccer Quebec in conjunction with Soccer Canada about what is, you know, the direction we're going in terms of solicitation of players, false advertising. There's a lot of, you know, especially with the licensing coming out, there was a lot of false ideas out there of who was getting it, who was not getting it, all this kind of stuff. So you'll see this around often. Okay, we're going to get into every detail in general. This, I guess, resume of it will be posted all around. And if you want to just keep it on 10 seconds, Andrew, just so they can look at it. Basically, it has to do with the zero tolerance of player solicitation and false advertising and putting other clubs down or speaking negatively about another club. And on the positive side, nothing wrong with promoting your club and your programs, and, you know, without putting anybody else's down. So it's all going to tie in when we get there later on. So we can move on. Okay. One of the big topics that came up that we're going to need to go over is player movement. So as you know, when the season begins and when we're starting to get, you know, if we didn't have COVID, especially, we would have been around at the period where player movement becomes an issue. You know, like in the winter programs, preparing the summer, there's movement and a lot of questions. So basically, we wanted to address this. This is something that that comes from Soccer Quebec. I'll read the document because what this is a protocol of the direction we're going with this. And this is not an official document because they're translating it and they're getting all the official documents done, but this is the direction we're going. So just to give everybody a heads up, I kind of resumed my meeting so we're all at least have an idea of what will be coming when the documentation comes out. So I'll read this because it was actually taken from the presentation. So the CSA and Soccer Quebec are implementing specific protocol regarding player movement. We want to start informing members of the direction that Soccer Quebec and member clubs will be heading. So the governing bodies will release official documentation shortly, but the general philosophy and expected behaviors from the members revolves around the following. The idea is that players are free to inquire about moving, especially backed with valid reasons, as will be mentioned below. Player movement should be based on correct and transparent information. Player movement should only and always be done with the player's best interest in mind, and clubs need to cooperate to ensure transparency and cooperation. So the philosophy everything goes back to this philosophy as we get into the details in the next slides. But before we go to the next slides, what this program, the CSA reform and the club licensing, what it's meant to do is allow clubs to work together and try to find the best solution for a player. So the cooperation is a big part of it. You know, if we PDs speak to each other. That's the new norm, is that we're supposed to cooperate much more, and we come to a conclusion and say, oh, player A should come to your club because it's a better environment for him for whatever reasons we'll look on in the next slides. It needs to be done for the player's well-being and not necessarily the team or the club's interest only. Okay, so and again, transparency, as you see, the second point B. A lot of players seek moving or even inquire about it because a lot of times they're misinformed. I had players even in the past tell me, well, I'm going to go to this club because they're a national club or they're going to be national, and that's not what happened. So when that didn't happen, we changed our mind. So it's important that parents and players understand the whole process before assuming something that might or might not be true. So it's just transparency being the key word. So we'll get into more details for the next in the next slides. Next slide, please, Andrew. The process is broken down into ages. So if we discuss player movement at U12 and under, okay, player movement should be limited at U12 and under, especially among clubs of the same license, okay, national and provincial, who offer the same services and the same format. There's really logically, I would say, no reason that the player would want to move, especially if they're from that area and it's more convenient. So those age groups are developmental age groups where the service offered is the driving force, not the competition. So it's not that, oh, I'm going here because they're a better team, because we're all following the same protocol. There are no teams at that age. There's no standings. So there's no really, I mean, it's not, oh, this provincial club is offering CDC, so I'm going there. No, because everybody's offering it. So it's just to understand what's the driving force, right? So it's not at these age groups that players need to start considering what club might be the best for their future in the sport. So it's not, oh, at U9, let me already start looking so that at U15, this would be the best situation for me. And we'll get into the reasons why soon. But the main reasons that players might consider moving clubs should be related to the current club does not offer a service they are looking for, i.e. CDC. Their CDC only offers once a week and the player wants 2 sessions a week. Player is in a regional club and wants more services that a provincial club offers. Those are valid reasons. Geographic location, a player moves. So that's another normal reason at that age to want to look at a different club. So this is, and everybody's on board with this, by the way. So this is not, like I said, this is a Soccer Quebec presentation where this information is coming from. It's not every club doing their own thing. So we're all on board as to the process for player movement. With that being said, the process, if a player is interested in moving, because at the end of the day, it's still their right to inquire and explore. So the process that will be put in place will be something like the following. Player is interested in joining a different club. The player, in this case, the parent, because of the player is a certain age, a younger age, must inform the club that they want to join by filling out a form that every club will probably get from Soccer Quebec, a template of a certain form to put online. And along with the personal information of the player, they'll ask questions like, why do you want to come to our club? Why do you want to leave your club? So it's not just the reason they're doing this, is also so we get an idea as to, is the parent really informed that we really don't offer this? Is that club saying they offer something they really don't? So it's and also, if we are not offering it, is it something we could use as feedback to improve? Like, oh, we got 10 players complaining that we don't offer CDC twice a week, for example. We should look into that. So it's also to gather information to make the club better. So so the process after that form is filled out, the club must the club must reach out to the player's current club to inform them. So I would reach out to the TD of the other club, for example, if a player wants to join DDO, and I would inform them that this player is interested in joining our club. Is it the best decision for them? And we'll try to aid the parent in the decision, which ultimately is theirs. A discussion will then take place with the player's best interest taken into consideration, The targeted club must ensure that the potential player movement is in the best interest of the player. So that's kind of what we were talking about before. So this is kind of the process at the U12 level and under. If you want to move, Andrew, to the next one. Okay, at U13, U14 player movement, okay? Again, it's always revolved around the player's best interest and the opportunity to play at a level that is beneficial for their environment. So at U13, 14, same reasons, except for you might add another reason just because there is a different level of competition at that age. So, which would be point B, which is the player has the ability to play at a higher level, at which point it is the club's responsibility to inform the player of his options and encourage them to do what is in their best interest, i.e. a very good player who might be, in the regional selection program and is still playing with his regionally licensed club. It might be beneficial to advise the player to join a provincially or nationally licensed club to play in the LDP or the PLSJQ. So that's the main point. The rest stays the same. Again, there's still services that one club might offer and one doesn't, depending especially on the license, and the geographic location always comes into effect. Players move, families move, that kind of stuff. The process stays the same, okay, for the most part. The player parent must inform the club that they want to join. Same thing, filling out a form and explaining the reasons why. Club reaches out to the player's current club to inform them. A discussion takes place with the player's best interest taken into consideration. The targeted club must ensure that potential player movement is in the best interest of the player, similar to what we discussed before. Now, important note related to this at this level, at the LDP PLSJQ level for U13, U14, there should be no hoarding of players. So if a mutate player joins a club, okay, it is because they will be playing regularly with that first team. So I'll give you an example. If we are a provincial club and we can put a team in the LDP, okay, but we also can put a team in A or AA, for example, okay. If we take players from other clubs, it's because we feel that there's a certain potential that they should be playing in our first team. It's not to do these little games that were done in the past that everybody's done. It's not necessarily a knock on it. It's just the system has changed. Not putting players in all in your second team and then rotating them and putting them up to the first team. So all that stops. It's really you're taking him because he contributes. He's a part of your first team. In rare situations where mutate players are needed on the second team, it should be really be a minimal amount, i.e. you don't have enough players to, on your second team, which use the example of a AAA, to field the team, or you're missing a couple. The Soccer Quebec will be looking at what the norm amount is of what would be allowed, but it should be minimal, i.e. 2 to 3 players. And it's only if there's a lack of players, as homegrown players should be on the second team. So the point is to have homegrown players developing on the second team that you might have. Okay. In addition, related to this, I mentioned it before, there's no player rotation. Okay. So, i.e., when you make your rosters, again, these are details that will come out when the season starts with the official rules of numbers and all that. But the idea they're looking at is there should be 32 players max between the two teams that a club might enter at an age group. So if you have an LDP team and an A team, for example, 16-16 makes sense. It's not, like I said before, placing players to rotate and all that kind of stuff. So this is all going to be, it's going to be this, but there will be more details with the actual numbers when the documents come out. Okay.
Mario, just before we go to the next slide, there is a question here in the chat. I think it's relevant to maybe highlight at this point, and it was a question about if a club has no license currently, what are the players' options for U13 and U14? So maybe explain the process of the other clubs getting their licenses this year.
Let's see. So the right now, the first year of the new reform, only the national and provincial license have been clubs applying for those licenses have been evaluated and decisions have been made. So regional clubs and the one underneath, which is Qualité de Soccer, de base, I think it is in French, those two have not been, the licenses for those have not been issued yet. So only the two higher licenses have been issued. With that being said, next year in 2022, everybody will have their license. So then every club will have one of the 4 levels of licenses. For now, the clubs who do not, well, you will get to it, Andrew, in that slide with the competition. You'll see that there's still AAA for these clubs that have not have access to LDP and PLSJQ. So I hope that answers the question for now, but you'll see it in the slide after.
Perfect. And just to touch on it too, is that there are some clubs that have regional licenses, but it's because they did not pass their provincial, so they were already granted a regional license. Correct?
Yes. So the clubs, not everybody who applied for the license that they wanted got it. So so if you applied for a provincial, for example, you didn't pass the criteria, you got the regional, so you've done your process. Now it's just for the clubs who still haven't done their process.
Perfect. Thank you, Mario.
Okay, last category would be player movement at U15 and up. Here is the same process, the same principles. The only thing that adds here is one more element, which would be C. The player might be a better fit in a different club, i.e. they will get more playing time at another club. The other club has a need for a certain type of player. So, example, we can even use this year as an example, even if the LDP doesn't reach those ages. But if you're a AAA club at U15 and up, it's a bit different than U12 and under, where it's based on development. It's a bit more competitive at U15 and up. So, with that being said, if there's a player that is you're on a AAA team and you're honest with the player and says, you know what, you're not playing often, you're not playing a lot, or whatever reason, you could communicate with another club in which it might be a better fit for them. That club needs a defender, needs this. So it always goes back to the transparency and the communication between clubs. But it's just that at this age, it's another element that we could start considering as to why players might want to move. Goals are different at this age. So everything else, say the other 3 points, of the 4 remain the same. Process is the same. The only difference with the process here at U15 and up is that you're not asking the club for permission, but there's a transparency saying, oh, by the way, player A has approached me and they're looking to move for this reason. So it's not like you're asking permission, it's more of cooperation, and you're advising the other club just so that you're on the same page, because they might be able to give you information that might help you as well. And again, it's always for the best interest of the player. I want to see if there was any. Oh no, same thing. Exactly, yeah. And the same concept applies for everything else. So it's nothing really extra to add besides the points that were mentioned. See, you can move to the next slide, Andrew.
Sorry, Mario, I was talking and I didn't have my mute unmuted. A couple of questions just in the chat, and I guess I don't know if you're going to get to it, but are there any rules around players that would be refused from changing from one club to the other club, or penalties, or it's the TDs talking to each other and figuring out what's best? Maybe explain what the thought process is in regards to the administration of how this player movement would work. So
the idea that we're discussing here is something that, like I said in the beginning, is going to be implemented. The details of it are still under works from Soccer Quebec as to how they will administer it and supervise it, I would say, with clubs. Now, with that being said, the official documentation will come out with with processes and numbers and protocols, all that stuff. But the general idea that I'm assuming we're getting to would be that there is no, if the question is specific about stopping a player from moving, we're not there to stop a player from moving. It's more of cooperating with the other club to advise the player what his best interest is. And then ultimately, the player. It's not that a player wants to go. We don't think he should, so we're gonna, you know, I don't know, blacklist him or do something preventing him from going. Of course, unless there's something, you know, disciplinary reason, something in the system, suspensions, that's different. But I'm saying all else being equal and in good standing, we don't punish a player, let's say, who wants to move. It is more for clubs to cooperate and understand the reasons behind it, and then the receiving club as well as the other club be transparent and say, hey, listen, you want to come here because, I don't know, you're saying you're not playing striker in DDO. Well, newsflash, just so that you know, you might not play striker here either. The conversation might, or the decision might be different than if this conversation that had never taken place. So it's more of an internal agreement rather than, oh, I'm telling you, you shouldn't go, so we're suspending you if you go. That's not really the idea behind it. I don't know if that answers it, Andrew.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think that it gives the audience information about how it's supposed to work. Because, you know, yes, we're highlighting it now, but, you know, with the years of experience, these things should have pretty much always taken place.
Exactly.
When a player leaves or a player comes, the coach or the tech staff need to be informed on why they were coming and why they're switching clubs, and not leave a club in the lurch. They're counting on this player, and now they're not part of their club anymore. There's just a sort of a bit of a follow-up question. What happens if 5 or 6 players they want to leave for a certain reason? And I guess that the answer is in the same vein. If 5 or 6 players want to leave the club or a team for a certain reason, then it needs to be investigated and understood instead of just leaving, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and then the club that they're going to, who is supposed to be following the process because they're evaluated for their license on following the process, they, in the interest of communication, transparency, and interest of the player as well, would ask questions like, oh, you know, why is this happening? Or, you know what, you know, if you come here, is it really what you're expecting? Or, you know what, we have a good relationship with the other club. I don't know if coming here is the best. We already have this many players. All these conversations happen, but the transparency of it is where all this comes out. Where in the past, people didn't really follow this, and you're just kept in the dark. And you know, there's people leave, they think it's better somewhere else, and then a year later they come back because it's the same thing over there. So it's to avoid this you know, misconception of things.
Oh, perfect. And Mara, I don't know if you touched on it or if you will touch on it later, but I think we had discussed as well that clubs will be evaluated on the number of player movements in and out, right? Like so you can touch on that a bit if you want.
Yeah, I said in the beginning, I don't know if everybody was there, but when you're evaluated on your license application, it's on your number of players you have as well. So, for example, a club who was only based on mutate players is a negative. A club who, you know, mutate players, player retention, all this is the metrics they're using now to evaluate clubs. So if a club is just going and taking players from everywhere, that's going to come on the database that they have with all the information as to why are you not developing your own players, et cetera, et cetera. And then similarly, they'll also come and say, oh, you've lost this many players. Why are you losing them? Are the reasons valid or are they not valid? If the reason is, oh, you know, you don't offer CDC twice a week, maybe it's valid. If the reason is, well, you know, the club doesn't make me do whatever I want to do, and I want to do my own thing, then maybe it's not valid. So it's a small world. Everybody, you know, the word gets out as to, you know, the reasons why people would want to move, because a lot of times we speak and we know, you know, the reasons come out. So it's just in a way to, before it starts getting out later on, to try to, you know, attack it in the beginning.
Perfect. Thanks, Mario. We'll move on.
Okay, so solicitation of players. So again, kind of related to some of Andrew's questions, or some of the questions from that were being asked. So there's a huge reform on solicitation of players, and how it's not allowed and not be tolerated, and you could lose your license over it. So again, if a player or players have valid reasons and seek elsewhere is one thing, but a parent, a coach who tries to, put down the club because things didn't go their way or for whatever reason, that is something different. And if the club that they're going to is aware of it or is part of it, there's investigations that be conducted on the member and also the club who are not reporting this kind of activity taking place. So, for example, any member of a club cannot directly target and solicit a player. False advertising and or putting down another club will not be tolerated. Again, this was on that pamphlet that I showed you that Soccer Quebec came out with that they're posting everywhere. Providing information about or promoting one's own club is acceptable, but not at the expense of belittling another club. Failure to follow these protocols, these and other protocols and best practices can lead to a club losing their club license. If a member within the club does not follow these and other protocols, the club must address the situation with the member and take whatever necessary actions it deems necessary, as well as report the situation to the governing bodies. Again, this is, I'm resumeing, okay, what is happening at the governing bodies and the conversations that have been had and where we're going. This is not something that I just came up with this morning. So just to clarify, this is a general direction that everybody is going in. And brings me to my next point. CSA Soccer Quebec should be coming out the official documentation describing more details concerning these matters. So again, as soon as we have everything, it'll be presented in documents, and probably by the time if the season starts the way it should. Those who've coached in the past know that the club, usually the VP of Intercity, Frank, has a coaches meeting, and a lot of these new rules and documentations are presented at these meetings, and that usually takes place closer to the season. But we're sharing it, or I'm sharing it in advance of what's coming, just so everybody's in the loop, because it's a time where, next month we might get a bit of a go ahead. At least we already know what's happening. Okay, next section would be the new competition structure 2021. U9 to U12 grassroots is the first topic of conversation. 2020 test run, 2021 now, this year, official launch date, okay? For those who were in the previous meetings, we discussed this. Competition structure remains the same, coaches certification applicable, and coaches expected to run CDC stations as per certification. So the general test run that we did last year is implemented this year to the full extent. At that age, player chooses CDC program, participates in regional competition, or chooses the recreational program and plays local recreational games. Those are the choice that the player has in the new reform and the ways programs are set out. Based on interest, no selection process at that age. So there's no tryouts or anything. It's anybody who's interested, according to our capacity, obviously, to have players is accepted. There's no divisions. There's one division. There's no multiple divisions, and there's no standings. Two new aspects of this. Okay, so first part, for U9 to U12. Last year, for those who were there, know that all the games were done on a balanced team. So there was no, the teams were just balanced or supposed to be evenly balanced and not by other criteria. That was because it was a test run and they want to see how it went. This year, there's a possibility of having games, and that will transform to trainings by similar ability as well. So what that means is they might do something like, and again, this is from the region, so we're waiting for that, but the talks are somewhere to the extent of we'll have balanced teams for some games, but in other games, for other weeks, maybe for the next block of 4 weeks, we might divide players by, in the past, there was talk of dividing them by, birthday or physical attributes, the bigger kids with smaller kids. But there's also the ability aspect now. So there might be blocks in which players will be put by similar ability. Okay, so those are a bit more advanced, go in one group. Those who are less advanced go to another group. Still get the same training, the same coaching at the training at the CDC. It's just for the games, it's to offer another element to change things up. And obviously, when the games happen to be an ability week game, okay, the training will be that as well. So you'll be training. The idea is you'll also be training with players of similar ability when you're divided into your groups at the practices. Okay, so this is we're looking at possibilities of how to do it, that to introduce also a bit of the ability aspect to have kids train with players and play with players who have similar abilities without necessarily scratching everything and making them forget that it's also sometimes good to balance and just go and have fun and all that. So and play with different players. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that we might be adding that element of dividing them by ability. And the second element, important new change, would be at the U8 level. Okay, so at U8 now, the U8 is no longer part of a regional league. So again, decision from Soccer Quebec, Soccer Canada, the regions, it's the governing bodies. Last year, U8 was part of a league, a schedule made by the region, in which they played games against other clubs. Starting this year, U8 in the competition structure, as you'll see in my next slide, in one of the next slides, is not part of a competition. Like at U8, they're not counted as U9 to U12, where you're playing other clubs. So at U8, they're still part of non-competitive, if you want to call it, in terms of playing against other clubs. So what we're looking at is either having some form of internal competition, either at the club itself or with other clubs in the form of exhibition games, festivals that are not part of a regional league schedule. Okay, so these are all things that are in discussion. Any immediate questions, Andrew, before we move on? No? Again, for U9 to U12, the idea of this, we've seen this slide in the past, is you choose which pathway you take, whether it's the development CDC pathway, where you do your station-based training with tech staff and certified or qualified coaches 2 to 3 times a week, okay? And you have the regional league games with Lac St. Louis against other clubs. Or the recreational pathway, where you just play your games per week, local, and the U4 to U8, which formerly used to be called micro, that U4 to U8 grassroots, that you still have your 1 CDC a week plus your 1 game day a week. Okay, and the U4s only have their 1 mixed session once a week. So that doesn't change from last year or what we did in the past.
Mario, sorry, I was muted last time you asked me about the questions. There are a couple of questions, but they're not related to what you're talking about now. So we'll save those to the end.
Yeah. Okay. So this is what I was talking about, the new competition structure. You'll probably see this posted around as well for those who were asking earlier on. Andrew, you see my mouse when I move it? Or you can move it? Okay, so
just tell me where to point.
Yeah, perfect. So this year, starting in 2021, the changes are at the top with the PLSJQ and the national level clubs in that category, and the LDP, the Ligue Développement Provincial, for the provincial level clubs. So those are the changes. You still have for this year the AA, the A local, all that at the U13, U14, because like I said, the other clubs haven't received their licenses yet. When they do receive it in 2022, I'll show you another slide what it will look like with the renaming of the competitions. Okay, so and if you look at the bottom, Andrew, at the U7, U8, that's where the governing bodies, when I say governing bodies, I always say regional or provincial or Soccer Canada even, come up with the format. U8 is there. That's where you see still part of the grassroots. And not part of the 70s, the competition structure that happens at the later on. So if you look there under U8, Andrew, it says aucune compétition officielle. So that's why it's not part of anymore of a governing regional league schedule, for example. There is, well, we'll get to that later on, so I won't touch too much. If you guys want to stay 10 seconds just to look at this, and then we'll move on. But I'll have more details in the next slide.
Mario, there is a question for the CDC program. Will the game still be on weekends or will be played during the week?
What age?
CDC.
Yeah, but the CDC, it depends.
Well, I'm going to say the CDC from 9 to 12. My understanding, at least, is that the clubs want the CDC training sessions during the week and the games on the weekend.
Yeah, the CDC, the schedule for the CDC U9 to U12 should be like last year, where the games are on the weekend and the CDC is during the week. But I was just asking in case it could have been a younger age group from U4 to U7. It was the opposite. It was the CDC was on the weekend, on Saturday, and their one game day was during the week.
That's correct. Yeah. So the club grassroots CDC for 4 to 8 would be like that weekend session and game during the week.
Yeah.
To help balance out the technical staff as well and field usage.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Okay, so new competition structure for 2021, U13, U14. Okay, so here is a bit different. Again, it all goes with the aligning itself with the vision of development of soccer in Canada and the age groups and all that. So here, there is a selection process at U13, U14, okay? The access to the league level is dependent on the club license that you have. So I didn't put PLSJQ because we don't have that, but for us, the access would be to LDP, AA, or A in 2021 for U13, U14. There is, again, no mute rule for U13 and up at the LDP level. So the first team that you have, okay? Again, the criteria for player movement will be according to the cooperation between clubs and according to whatever documentation finally comes out. There is no standings anymore at U13 over competitiveness, over competitive coaches, all these reasons as to why they've eliminated it. And they're looking at eliminating it at U14 as well, but it's not official yet. So we'll get news on that. They're looking at creating geographic conferences because, as you know, there's 17 provincial clubs, 7 national clubs. And again, the workload is important. We need to set a recommended workload. So the club, I've said this numerous times in other presentations, the club needs to be advised of extra player activities. And again, coaches must ask club permission to attend events, etc. So this is something important as we move to the next slide.
Mario, just a question there. You mentioned no mute rule for the LDP. Is it for A and AA? It's still up in the air what the region is doing in regards to the mute rule.
So I'll explain in the next one. The reason is because at the U13, sorry, at LD, in my previous slide, I had said that only at LDP you're allowed to have mutes. You shouldn't be putting them in your second teams to then rotate or whatever. So at LDP, there is no mute rule, but they will put a limit at what you have on your second team to avoid hoarding players from other clubs in your second team. To then, I'll give you an example. If a club is a provincial, is a national level club, and they're at the PLSJQ, so to avoid everybody going there and say, oh, you know what, I'll play LDP for them with the hope of moving up to PLSJQ for some games, right? Then it defeats the purpose of doing that. So so that's how they're counteracting to keep the second teams you have the homegrown talent and only have mutes on your first team that should be playing. You're taking them because they should be playing on your first team.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me. I understand. Just more, I was thinking of like if we had U12 Division 2 teams last summer and they gained some mutes either by cuts from the first team or players joining from other clubs, and they were first-year mutes, like they may not qualify to be a LDP team player. They want to just remain with the team that they were on last year, which may be an A or AA. So I guess that's going to be a case-by-case evaluation.
Yeah, case-by-case, but if they're already on the club, it's not the same as if a new mute is coming from this year.
Perfect, thank you.
So LDP specifically, okay, 2021, again, selection process, no mute rule, U13 and up. Again, this is all repeat except for no player rotations, okay? So whatever roster size is deemed acceptable is what you have to have. You're not rostering 20 and making players at this age rotate. U13 no standings, U14 possibly no standings. And here the everything is the same on my previous slide except for the games at the end, at the bottom. So they're looking at having approximately 20 games in the schedule. Approximately 5 games would be versus national licensed club, and that's primarily because at this stage only 7 clubs have received the national license, and some of them are far away. On top of that, so they're not enough to solely have an independent league on their own without playing each other multiple times over and over again.
Mario, just
the games are on the. By the way, I forgot to mention on the point on top. They're trying to put the games on the weekend for the LDP as well. So Saturday or Sunday for LDP. The reason for that, they want to do it, but they just need to get back to us because at this level, you're governed by the province now. You're not governed by Lac St. Louis, the region at LDP. So the referees are also part of the province. So it also has to do with their availability of referees and all that stuff. But ideally, they're looking to put it on the weekend.
Yeah, perfect. Just Mario, I wanted to just touch. I don't know if it's been finalized. I've had some discussions and I heard it that the format of the game could also change. Is that finalized yet, or is that still in discussion? Meaning the length of game.
Like you mean the time?
Like I've heard of 3 periods instead of 2 halves and 2 half times and all that stuff.
No, I never heard anything like that.
Oh, okay. So maybe I've heard something that's not finalized yet, but I had heard that they were looking to switch like a game to 3 periods of say 25 minutes with 2 half times, and then there was going to be 5
LDP level.
At the LDP level, yeah.
No, I didn't hear anything like that.
Okay, so maybe it's.
Well, again, see, most of the things you're seeing on this slide here, is from their unofficial documents that I just met with them with. So I'm taking what info they're giving me. So it would have been on here. I'm assuming if a major change like that would have been presented.
Yeah. And just a question that's come up in the chat. There's actually 2 that are valid for right now. It was so is it possible that LDP teams playing that LDP teams play outside of the region and play in other provincial groups? So my response to that was yes. The provincial level clubs are going to play against other provincial level clubs throughout the province, but you do have the note in here that the geographic conferences are possible. So it may be one of those things where you play your conference twice and you play the other conference once. Maybe half the games home, half the games away, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the other one was if a club were no longer, and this sort of goes back to the mute rules and the movement of players. If a team in a club collapses, those players pretty much become free agents, right? They may not be penalized by joining other clubs. Again, it goes back to the case-by-case evaluation of what happened in a particular club or with a particular team.
Yeah, it's case by case. I need to know the situation, but again, if we're talking at the LDP level, if a club has a majority of players that are of caliber to even consider making a team in the LDP, and a whole they all go somewhere else, don't forget that club already has players, right? And they can't have excess of the amount of players. So there's only so many you could take by the roster limit that they're giving you. So it really depends. It's a case-by-case situation.
Yeah. No, I think